Hello everyone, hope you're having a good day wherever you are. Today we're looking at the third part of this mental health tool, if you want to call it that, and we're going to be looking at the little breathing tool component thing, but in particular we're going to pay attention to the timer component and how it operates, and also let's say this on the side, we're going to look at the paint box and how the bar is drawn. So without further ado, let's jump into the code and see what it does. So basically here you're looking at the form in design time, and you can see here that we have a paint box over here on the left hand side, and then there is a timer. So pretty much as far as the components on the form are concerned, that's all we're really using, because the painting of the bar or the drawing of the bar is handled in the program code, and that's what we're going to look at now. So but we may as well start with the project source and see where that leads us. So this U breathing unit is the main form that we're looking at. I've got a little tiny function here, and this particular, or this unit here, implements just this little function here, and basically this function here, given a double, returns a double, and it basically it implements a function which works out the how much of the bar, or how the bar gets drawn. So if we have a look at this, it's used to work, and it's actually used to work out how much of the so this function here is used in the drawing of the bar, so that if you can see here, it will start off slow, becomes faster, and then peters out again towards the end. So it creates a nice smooth animation effect for the implementing the breath or the breathing when we breathe in, or when we inhale and exhale. And then we've got some application settings. And just quickly on the application settings, these are used to control the colors, how the paint box is displayed on the screen, and that will also include the height or the width of the bar, and what fonts we're going to use, and then there is a margin for the displaying of the text. So you'll probably see that a little bit more easily. So let's just go into the main unit, because it can actually be drawn in two ways. It can handle both horizontal bar and a vertical bar. Of course, you need to tell the program which way it's going to be going, but it doesn't work it out magically. Let's go to the code here, and we'll take out that one and put that one in. And we can run it again here, and now you can see here the application, or this breathing component in full, where we have a border, the text, and the bar itself, and it's using colors here. So let us start then with the form create function, and what happens there, and we're going to come towards the timer in a second. So basically have some default duration. So I basically have the inhale set to 4 seconds, the hold duration to 4 seconds, my exhale and my hold, they're all going to be 4 seconds. It's sort of like a box breathing exercise. Now as far as the phases are concerned, we go from an inhale to a hold to an exhale to a hold. The difference, by the way, between the holds is one is when we're full of breath and we're holding, versus we've exhaled all of our air and have nothing left in us. And then we come down to this particular timer here. And before we talk about the timer, This particular program here for the display is using double buffering to make the presentation or the drawings appear smoother on a background. So when we look at the timer is what's used to control the drawing of the bar, if you will. It basically, a timer, and basically sits on top of a timing function, that's part of the operating system's OS, and in this case here, every if we're using these settings here, every 1 second, because the interval is actually in milliseconds. If it is enabled, then it will be executed. If it is not enabled, then it will not get executed. And then you've got these 3 event handlers. So what happens when the timer started, what happens when we stop it, and then every time the timer fires, what will the program then do? So here, if we set this to say 2000, then that will be every 2 seconds, this function here would fire. Now, what's actually going to happen in our case though here is we've got the our interval though is going to be 16, so it'll be 16 milliseconds, and if you sort of like do the maths, that rounds out to about effectively 60 times or 60 frames per second, and that's how we can achieve, let's say, a nice smooth animation. So what happens inside the timer? Well, if we jump down to the code here, what's going to happen is we will be increasing the amount of time we are in this particular phase. So if we're in an inhaling phase, then how far along have we tracked? If we're in a holding phase, the same, and etc. Now, if we go longer than the particular duration, then we need to switch phases. So we go from that inhale to a hold, from a hold to exhale, and exhale to hold again. Regardless of that, what's going to then happen is the paint box, that's this component here, becomes invalidated, and when it gets invalidated, it gets repainted. So you can imagine every time we jump into here, we increase the phase time, and the box is then repainted, and we are then using double buffering. Now, you can have a different duration for, let's say, the hold times versus the inhale and exhale times, and in which case here in this function here, we basically are saying here, well, if we're in an inhale phase, then this is going to be our duration. If we are in an exhale state, then this becomes our duration. So in switching phases, basically this is just a simple state machine. If we're here, we will then move into here. If we are in this phase here, we move to here, etc. This next function here we'll just describe as, we're going to get to this one here as part of the paint function. So if we just go back to this timer routine again, then when we hit this invalidate call, what's going to happen then is we're going to go up to the paint, and we will go into this on paint event. Now this on paint event basically handles the drawing of the bar and the text within that paint box, and the border, of course. So what we're going to do here is just basically make sure we've got the right colors and styles being used. We make sure that we've got the right background color. Essentially, in a paint function, we are responsible for the painting, or how we want the whatever we're drawing, we control how it will appear. Now here, what you're going to see next is we're going to put a border around the control itself. So here what we can do is we And we've got two settings for these, border color and thickness, and then we will basically draw a rounded rectangle. So that rounded rectangle basically is, if we run the program again, this bit around here. So we just go back to where we came from here. And then we set up, now here we are going to be setting our canvas font. Now our canvas font, it will become important when we want to work out where text should be placed. The text width function here is basically we're trying to work out where our text gets positioned. The things like the font style, the font name, the font size, etc. These can be used to, these will govern where the text can start, or where the text starts, on within the form. Because when we actually draw the text here, we wanted to go here and here. So to work out that left position, basically we have to look at the width. We look at then the width of the phase label. We subtract A from B, and we divide that answer by 2, and that becomes our X position. So if we have the wrong text width here, then it can appear out of position. Now here, once we've done that part here, given the breathing phase, we're going to get back 3 values. How much of the bar is to be displayed, what's our starting and ending color, and what label are we going to display at the top. So basically the start color and the end color, like we're going to be using greens to blues, whether we should be drawing 10% versus 25%, etc. And if we are in an inhale phase, well, then we're going to use the word inhale. So if we look here, then we work out here how much of what fraction of the bar using that particular function is to be drawn, what is our starting and ending color, and our text. And we have one of these cases here for each of the different states of the program. So there's going to be one for the inhale, 2 for the hold, and 1 for the exhale. Why are there 2 for the hold? Because we need to have one once we've inhaled, and we need one to draw it fully, and the other one is when we've exhaled fully, and we need to show no bar at all then. Now, the other thing you should be aware of here is that these parameters here are declared as out parameters as opposed to a var parameter, or having no specifier here. Being declared as an out parameter, meaning these parameters are all going to be given values on, let's say, on the way out. So they will all have a value. And so basically here it's either going to be T1 0 or 0 there, or 1 minus T when we're drawing the exhaling one, when we're going smaller. And of course I said here before, or I showed you as well, that we can have a horizontal bar or a vertical bar depending upon our orientation. And the main reason why we need to separate those is because of the gradient direction, whether we're going to go that way or that way. Otherwise the code is pretty much the same. So really what we're looking at here is, is all about breaking a problem down into, let's say, smaller problems. I want to be able to draw let's say a horizontal bar or a vertical bar. How do I determine where that text appears? How can I control how much of the bar is displayed? How can I get that to be happen repeatedly? In this case here, we're going to use a timer. Now, of course, there is always help in the free Pascal website that gives you information about a timer, and you can start pretty much here with the TTimer. So you can actually find it on the system tab of the component palette, and it will deliver a timer with millisecond resolution. The thing I'll point out to you is that it will, if you're looking for a timer with tight precision or good, it's not going to be, you know, it may be, let's say, half a millisecond out, and if that is too much for you, then you've got to look for something else to use. But in the main, it's good enough for, you know, what we'd be doing here, or something where you might want to update your a grid, you know, displaying, let's say, statistics. And then basically and every time then that the timer will expire again, you know, some code gets executed then. And again, if you wanted to, one thing that can be done if you feel that the code in a timer may take longer to execute than a single instance, one thing you can do is to put, let's say, this line here at the top of your timer code. You want to stop the timer from running again. You can do your work, and then you could restart the timer. And in restarting the timer, and you had it set to say, you know, 1500, then in 1.5 seconds the timer would run again. So now we can look at the properties, or the what the interface might actually look like. And here you can see that a timer comes from a custom timer, from a component, you know, etc. there. And it's a rather common component that you would use when you want to have something that runs repeatedly, and maybe where you don't want to use we don't want to have a thread being utilized. And the other thing also is that using timer code, it essentially is running in the main thread, so you can update the user interface from within your timer event. And again, the only thing to be aware of is that this interval value is going to be in milliseconds. So if you wanted to do 1 minute, then that would be 60,000. So that's all there is in the main unit. Now you're probably looking at some of the code here and seeing where I've got settings.inhale, start and hold colors. But I am going to say here, but I don't have these values here being, let's say, settable, if you want to call it that. So what I was thinking now, to make the maybe later on or further down the track, we could put in or add in a configuration form to allow a user to control what the, let's say, what the color is going to be used are, what the border width is to be used. And if you remember back in our first video with the quotes, then, you know, the information that's stored here, such as the font appearance, which includes the name, size and color, could also be used in that particular, when I say program, that part of the application. Ultimately, what's going to happen is we're going to have, you know, these particular forms being put into frames, you know, so we can switch between one and the other to have a little toolbox of functions that can be run as we want them. The other thing in here which you'll notice is that I've actually implemented this particular class as a singleton. So what that means is that each time you want to get an instance of this, you're basically going to get back an instance to the existing object, and this instance here is the reference, you will call it, to the application settings, which contains all of these ones. So here, basically this is where I'm getting a reference to my application settings, and that settings there is really a reference to this particular instance here, because when you look at the instance here, what we're saying here is that if we don't have an instance, we create one, and that's the one that we're returning. And if you want to look at more about what a class var is, well, let's see whether or not we can find something in here. Free. Now here we're using this particular approach here to declare a static field, and we can make it part of that class. So that's about it for this third part of the application. We will go back to the second part and do more with the layering of sound. But that's it for this particular video, so I hope you got something out of it, and until next time, happy coding, and I will see you then, and bye.